Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatirbhavatirneshtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatyadesh So we'll resume our discussion from 1:13:14. So just in terms of establishing the context, this chapter is Dhritarashtra quits home, and we were discussing the conversation between Vidur and Dhritarashtra. More than a conversation, it's a monologue. To some extent, it's a conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthir and Mahatma Vidur. But really speaking, it's a monologue that is directed towards Dhritarashtra, who is quietly sitting and hearing. And also, factually speaking, it's a conversation that is directed towards us. So as we will see more so today, that whatever Vidur speaks to Dhritarashtra, he's also speaking to Yudhishthir. And it is also applicable more so to us. Okay, so we'll do 1:13:14. Kanchit kalam athavat sit satkrita devavat sukham Prathu jeshtasya shreyaskrit sarvesham sukham avahan. Thus, Mahatma Vidur, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period of time just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother, and in this way bring happiness to all others. So Sutta Goswami says that Vidur was treated as Devavat. So Deva means godly or divine. And Prabhupada says that this is the appropriate way to treat one who is spiritually exalted. That they should be treated as if they are at the same level as the Devas, if not at the same level as Krishna himself. And the reason is, this was one of the verses that were discussed last time, because devotees carry Krishna in their heart. So wherever they are, Krishna is there. So they're also treated with the same love, affection, and respect. So earlier we had seen that Vidur, he had left home for good. And his coming back at this point is not really to come back and live. So it's not that he left in an anger and now his anger has cooled off and so he's back. But he is simply visiting. So he had left home, he had broken ties with his family members. So Vidur's arriving there is not returning home. Vidur's arriving there is visiting for a certain purpose, and the purpose is revealed over here. That he is coming for Bhratru Jestasya Shrevadagakarishu Yavadadara Sudratvam Shapadvarsha Satam Yamaha. As long as Vidur played the part of a Shudra, being cursed by Manduka Muni, Arima officiated at the post of Yamaraj. to punish those who committed sinful acts. So this verse talks about the qualification of Vidur. That Vidur is sitting over here and preaching to Dhritarashtra, personalities like the Yudhishthir and Pandav. Was he qualified to preach? And so the Goswami said, yes, Vidur is not an ordinary person. He is Yamraj. And we discussed this in the previous discussion, that Manduka Rishi cursed him because of a misunderstanding. And for 100 years, he came and took the position of he took the position of Vidur, even though there is some confusion over this use of the word Varshasatam. So Varshasatam means for 100 years, but Vidur was obviously much older than 100 years. When Yudhishthir himself was close to 100 years, then one can understand that Vidur was older than 100 years. But the understanding here is that just like we had discussed, that many times in the Bhagavatam also and other verses, people will say Krishna had 16,000 wives, or they might say 16,100 wives. They won't always say 16,108 wives, because it kind of breaks the flow. So here when they say Vidur was 100 years, so it means it could be 110 years, 120 years. Understanding is it was more like 150 years, but 100, in the 100 range. That's the understanding that is here. So the position of Vidur is exalted, that he's Yamraj, and Yamraj's position is exalted. He is one of the 12 Adityas. I'm sorry, he's one of the Lokapals, and he's one of the 12 Mahajans. And in order to give a reference of how exalted it is, Sutta Goswami says that while he was not there, Arima himself took his position. So Arima is himself a very exalted person. Arima is one of the 12 Adityas. He is the head of the Pitras. He rules the planet of Pitras, and he came and occupied his position. So definitely, Vidur is very qualified to give instructions. Prabhupada in the purport makes this point that one should not look at the material qualification of a devotee. And he says, just like Krishna, whether he comes as a hog or a fish or a tortoise or a dwarf, he's always Krishna. And the same thing is applicable to devotees. So in the purports, Prabhupada says the Lord and his different authorized devotees sometimes have to play the role of many lower creatures to claim the conditioned souls. But both the Lord and his pure devotees are always in the transcendental position. So one may say that, but Vidur represents a contaminated mentality of Yamraj. Because of that contaminated mentality, he punished Manduka Rishi, who should not have been punished. So he's in effect he's a cursed version of Yamraj. And Prabhupada in the purport, I'm not sure what the source of it is. Prabhupada does not say, but then he also reveals this more subtle interplay. He says that Yamraj is tired of constantly chastising sinful people. So because he has this role of being one who corrects sinful people, so just like in a prison house, a warden, he only deals with criminals. And then at some point he gets tired. And he says, when am I going to deal with people who are law-abiding citizens? So Prabhupada says, in the same way, Yamraj, he got tired that enough of criminals. When can I interact with Krishna and his devotees? So in order to satisfy the desire, this pastime of Manduka Rishi was enacted. And of course, Krishna achieves many things in the same time. So he also came to help Krishna in his Bhaumi Leela. Now, even if we were to ignore Vidur's antecedents, then the current position of Vidur by the association of devotees is also very exalted. That when Vidur left, and we'll read about that in the third and the fourth canto, then he had association of Uddhav, a very close associate of Krishna. Uddhav gave him brief instructions, and then he had association with Maitreya Rishi, another close associate of, not an associate, but a very advanced stage. And he had long conversations with Maitreya Rishi, which completely enlivened him. So by this association of devotees, by inquiring and receiving knowledge, Vidur had himself become very exalted. So that itself, even if you keep aside the fact that he is Yamraj, a great devotee of Krishna, but just his activities in the current age make him qualified to give instructions. So because this is an important point, and I think the reason that Srila Prabhupada wants to emphasize it, even though Prabhupada wrote these purports long before he came to the US, but I think him being a devotee, a pure devotee, he also emphasizes on this point that because when Prabhupada was giving initiation to Westerners, a lot of people would object to it, especially from India, that these people were eating beef. They were born in families, Malichas and Yavans and etc. etc. And then Prabhupada would always counteract it by saying that when one becomes a devotee, then one's past becomes irrelevant. So Prabhupada actually, he refers to some verses, and I just wanted to share with you. So one verse that he refers to is from Niti Darpan by Chanakya Pandit, which is a famous verse. Prabhupada quotes that at other places. Vishad api amratam grahya. So Vishad is poison. So from poison, one should take nectar, amritam, if it is present. Then amedya dapi kanchayam. From a dirty place, one should be eager to take gold. Then nishad apya uttamam vidyam. So nishad is a low-born person. So from a nishad, one should get uttamam vidyam. That if the person is able to give the best knowledge, one should take it. And stri ratnam dushkaladat. That a woman, if she has good quality, ratnam, if she has exemplary qualities, even if she belongs to a low family or a disreputable family, one should accept it. So even though Vidur is a Shudra, but because he has achieved spiritual knowledge, spiritual realization, it is recommended to take that knowledge from him. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Madhya Leela, he says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Ke Naya Yene Krishna Tattva Veta Say Guru Hoya. That whether one is a Vipra, whether one is a Brahman, Nyasi is sannyasi, or Shudra, Kiba Shudra Ke Naya, that when he becomes Krishna Tattva Veta, if that person knows the science of Krishna consciousness, say Guru Hoya. That person is, you should accept that person as a spiritual master. And then there is, of course, the famous verse in the Nectar of Instruction, verse 6, which says that a pure devotee does not identify with the body and should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. So one should overlook a devotee as having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or an infirm body. So they may seem to be imperfections from a material perspective, but from but for a pure devotee, all these things do not matter. And then he gives the example of the Ganges water, that the water of Ganges may become full of bubbles during the rainy season, but the water remains still pure. Okay, we'll do the next verse, 113-16. Yudhishthira rajya drishtva pautram kulam daram radbi lokapala bhair mumade paryashriya. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson, competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaj Yudhishthir reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. So this verse is spoken by Sutta Goswami to establish the context of what Vidur is about to say. So Vidur is going to comment on the living conditions of Dhritarashtra. So here he describes what the living conditions are. So Vidur, while living in the palace, he has noted that the Kuru kingdom has been flourishing due to the piety of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Then there is security in the royal order. Generally, the kings, they are insecure. So they are always afraid for enemies attacking from outside or from within. There's a lot of intrigue that is happening. But Vidur observed that there is Maharaj Yudhishthir is because of the piety, there is no insecurity, and then the lineage has also been established. So there is no cause for any anxiety that the kingdom is flourishing, the king is pious, there is opulence all along, there are no enemies, the lineage is established. So this is the environment in which Dhritarashtra is living. And this is what is the context in which Vidur will begin to instruct Dhritarashtra. 113-17. Evam greshu sattanam pramattanam tadihaya atyakrama vigyata kala parmadushtaraha. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought. So when we see the preaching of Vidur, we get an understanding of the more subtle part of preaching. So he does not begin by preaching directly to Dhritarashtra. Right now, he's stating axiomatic truths. So here he's saying that time overcomes everyone, and especially those who are too attached to family affairs. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one can understand that this verse does not apply to the Pandavas, because in the previous chapter it has already been stated that, so this is 112.6, where it was stated that, O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king, and this is King Yudhishthir, was so enchanting that the denizens of the heaven aspired for it. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. So clearly Yudhishthir and the Pandavas, they were not in the category of being too attached to family affairs and engrossed. So this verse is really meant for people who are saktanam griheshu. So saktanam is strongly attached. Griheshu is to family affairs, to the point that tadyaha pramattanam, that they are mad. Pramattanam, pramat means being mad. One of the defects is being mad. But because of this intense attachment, they become completely mad in their thoughts. And what happens to them? So Vidur says, insurmountable time imperceptibly overcomes them. So which means that they grow old and they fall sick and they ultimately die. So Burijan Prabhu over here says that time is compared to what animal? Snake. Why? Because the snake steadily comes and bites us. We don't notice time. We try to live comfortably in old age. We think we can relax after a whole life of working hard, but the snake is very close. And Prabhupada in the purport, he says, I'm now happy. I have everything in order. My bank balance is quite enough. I can now give my children enough estate. I am now successful. The poor beggar sannyasi depend on God, but they come to beg from me. Therefore, I am more than Supreme God. These are some of the thoughts which engross the insanely attached householder who is blind to the passing of eternal time. And later on he says, they do not know at all how to solve the problems of life, but become engrossed in temporary family affairs, not knowing that eternal time is passing away imperceptibly and that the measured duration of life is diminishing every second without any solution to the big problem, namely repetition of birth and death, disease and old age. This is called illusion. So one point that is brought up over here is this also reveals the reason that Sutta Goswami is speaking about Dhritarashtra and Vidur Vartalap, whereas the question that was asked of him was about Parikshit Maharaj. So this reveals a connection between Vidur's story and Parikshit's story. That Vidur is preaching to Dhritarashtra to renounce, and Yudhishthir also renounces. So Bhakti Yoga must be supported by Gyan and Vairagya. So Vidur's preaching is strong in Vairagya. And we see the same Vairagya being displayed by Parikshit Maharaj when he gets bitten by a snake. We see the same Vairagya being demonstrated by Yudhishthir Maharaj when he sees that when he hears that Krishna has left the planet. So this theme of Gyan and Vairagya as being the two catalysts, the two facilitators to bhakti, is being displayed in this pastime, and it also becomes the pivotal theme in the pastime of Parikshit Maharaj that leads to the speaking of Bhagavad. So earlier on we had said that how the reason this Sutta Goswami speaks about this pastime is just from the sequence of events. This is one of the event in the chain of events that lead to the speaking of the Bhagavata, and that was more from a chronological perspective. Here we see that there is also a correlation in the sentiment. So this sentiment of Vairagya that is being preached by Vidur to Dhritarashtra will also resonate in Yudhishthir and will also resonate in Parikshit Maharaj. So a point that I was making earlier, I just wanted to complete that also, that when we read these verses by Vidur, we also get a glimpse into the art of preaching. That and this is of course super condensed, but Vidur does not attack Dhritarashtra. So you see that here he is speaking about the general condition of men, and then using that he will segue into Dhritarashtra. So he does not start off by saying that you're nonsense, you're the most fallen of human beings, and you should rectify it immediately. He's saying that this is something that is being experienced by the majority of the people. So in a way, he's ratifying the position of Dhritarashtra. But then he goes on to say that just because it is being experienced by the majority of the people does not make it right. So I was once attending a class on the art of negotiation, and one of the person was speaking over there. So apparently some of the best negotiators in the world are the used car salesmen, and the technique that they use is the art of getting the other person to say yes. So when you go to a used car lot, the person will not talk about the car. He'll say that, isn't it a wonderful day? And you'll say yes. And he says, you're coming here to buy a car. And then obviously you're going there to buy a car, not to meet him. So you say yes. And so you're looking for a good price in the car. Yes. You want a great deal on the car. Yes. So by the time you have said yes 20 times, when he shows you a car that is worth $5,000 and says, are you willing to pay $10,000 for it? You got so used to saying yes, you will say, yes, of course, I'll pay $10,000 for it. So in a more negative way, that's the art of Prem Kishore Prabhu. Do you want to change the I think he's gone. What if I can do it?
What Prabhu? I didn't get it. Sorry.
The format of the screen.
Oh, it's still there. Okay, 1 second. Sorry for that.
No worries. Thank you. I just like this format better because the thumbnails are bigger. Yeah. So that's of course in a more negative way, where you're trying to defeat somebody just to benefit. But preaching is also like that. You basically become friends with the person. You basically get the person to open their heart for you, and when you're in the heart, then you change the heart from outside. You can never shame a person to become a devotee. You can never defeat a person in an argument and make him a devotee. The only way is that you can love a person and make him a devotee. So we see the Vidur doing that he will first speak in very generalized terms, almost ratifying the Dhritarashtra's position, that everybody is doing like this. And the Dhritarashtra's mind is saying, yeah, everybody is doing it, so it's okay. Right? And then when he has the Dhritarashtra's heart open, then he goes in and he starts letting him have it completely. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there is any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The explanation of the used cars and this one was very touching, and because initially when I heard this, I felt like, suppose we are all in the class and if you are pointing to me and generally scolding, still I know that you will be scolding me, then I will become like shrinking to hear. I will resistance come. That is how I was thinking. But the mood in which actually Vidur is saying, not in an admonishing mood, but in a mood that generally make him accept, and then slowly he is telling. So thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, here is Rangadas. One more point is the father of Vidur is Vyasdev also.
Right. So he definitely had an exalted lineage.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Prabhu. So we will continue with 113.18. Vidurasta abhipretya dhartarashtamabhasata rajan nigramayatam sigram pashyedam bhayamagatam. Mahatma Vidur knew all this, and therefore he addressed Dhritarashtra saying, "My dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you." So obviously the honeymoon period of preaching between Dhritarashtra and Vidur is very short, just one verse. Because now Vidur is being very direct to him. So previous two verses were spoken to establish the context for the subsequent instructions. So Sutta Goswami had spoken verse 16 that he was living with the opulences of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and 17 was spoken to talk about the inevitable influence of time. So this verse starts with Vidura Tat Abhipretya. That Vidur knew all this, and because of that he addressed. So what did he know? So he knew that Dhritarashtra, who was at this point old and was always blind, was living a comfortable life. So the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthir was opulent. His kingdom was flourishing. There was no intrigues happening. So Dhritarashtra was living peaceful, surrounded by luxury. As comfortable as his life was, Vidur also knew that times insurmountable action would eventually crush him, and then Dhritarashtra would die. All his comfort would be destroyed, and his human form of life would be wasted because he had not used it to develop spiritual advancement. So in this old age, Dhritarashtra had become fully dependent upon the graciousness of his nephew Yudhishthira Maharaj. And that graciousness that Dhritarashtra was experiencing was in a way preventing him to see his position with respect to Krishna. And so it is said that everybody meets Krishna one way or the other. The devotees meet Krishna in a smiling face, and the others meet Krishna as death. But because of the graciousness that that Dhritarashtra was experiencing, he did not feel that he would be seeing Krishna in either of the two ways. He did not feel that he would see Krishna as death, and he did not feel the need to see Krishna as the personality of Godhead. So this is why Vidur is preaching to Dhritarashtra, and that also he's speaking. So it's not that he took Dhritarashtra to a private chamber and spoke to him. He's speaking in the presence of everybody. So not only Yudhishthira and the Pandavas are there, but the ladies are also there. And one can understand that the other members of the court who had also eagerly come over there to hear Vidur's word, they're also hearing. So it is one thing to speak harshly to a person in private, It's another thing to speak in that mood in public. And the reason Vidur is doing it is because he's not only preaching to Dhritarashtra, he's preaching to Yudhishthira and everybody else. And the second reason is that he wants his words to be like swords. He wants them to cut the strong ropes of affection that are or in case of Dhritarashtra, the ropes of complacency, because he doesn't really have any affection for Yudhishthira, but he has the ropes of selfishness and complacency. So he wants it to cut by using these harsh words, and words become harsher when they're spoken in public. So we see that Vidur, so we see that Vidur says Rajan Nigramatayam Shigram. So he's addressing Dhritarashtra as king. To some extent, it is factual that just like when somebody becomes the president, then even when the person is not president, the protocol is that you still address the person as Mr. President. So Dhritarashtra was king, and even though he's not king now, so it is okay to address him as king. But the acharyas say that Vidur is also saying this sarcastically, because Dhritarashtra was never the king. When he was born, he was blind, and because of that, he was precluded from occupying the throne. When Pandav went and died, then he was only the custodian of the throne on behalf of the successor. And when Yudhishthira came to age, then Yudhishthira was the rightful heir to the throne, and Dhritarashtra was unlawfully holding on to it. So all his life, he was scheming and intriguing and aspiring to become the king. But at this point, it is clear that he will never be king. So Vidur is sarcastically calling him king to force him to reflect on this. That your whole lifelong pursuit was to become king, and yet here you are sitting there pretending to be a king, but actually you're not that. So one of the points that is also made over here is that the harsh words that are spoken by Vidur are not spoken in the mood of anger or spite. So one may think that Vidur is getting even with Dhritarashtra, because the reason Vidur left Hastinapur was because he was insulted by Duryodhana, while Dhritarashtra stood by. Duryodhana called him a Dasi Putra. He questioned his loyalty. When Vidur was making a case to accommodate the Pandavas, then Duryodhana was very upset at him. And he said that you are living on so he called Vidur, he compared Vidur to a dog who's living who's taking food from us, but yet you're not being loyal. And here we'll see Vidur calling Dhritarashtra a dog, living on Bhima's food. But the acharyas want to make this point that is not the case. It's not that Vidur coming back all after 30 years to saying, now I'll get even for you. But Srila Prabhupada explains that Vidur as a saint and as a duty-bound affectionate brother of Dhritarashtra wanted to awaken Dhritarashtra from his slumber of disease and old age. Vidur therefore sarcastically addresses Dhritarashtra as the king, which he is actually not. And later on we'll read that even Vidur is on a journey by himself. That this incident has come a little early because it fits into the narrative. But if you look at it from the flow, Vidur leaves Hastinapur. He travels from pilgrimage to pilgrimage, purifying himself. He meets with Uddhav, gets instructions from him, associates with a pure devotee, has long association, Maitreya Rishi. So he's really charged up. And some of the lessons that he learned from Maitreya Rishi was the role of Vairagya in Bhakti. We'll see that in the fourth canto, which prominently talks about this influence of Vairagya in Bhakti. So specifically, Vidur had heard about Maharaj Rishabdev, who was an incarnation of Krishna, but he exemplifies that mood of great renunciation in making spiritual advancement. So he's on that journey himself of becoming more and more renounced and taking to spiritual advancement. And that is what he is giving to Dhritarashtra also. That he somehow wants to cut this strong material ropes around Dhritarashtra to make him renounced. And he actually succeeds in doing that. Next verse, 113-19. Pratikriya yasyeha kutashchit karhechit prabho sayesha bhagavan kala sarvesham na samagataha. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time that has approached us all. So, previous verse, Vidur said, leave immediately. Now, Dhritarashtra may inquire, why should I leave immediately? I may be old, but death is not imminent. And that is the mood of materialistic people. They will always, they consider the temporary to be permanent. That is the nature of material person. And it's not that they deny. So nobody will say that I am immortal. But the temporary situation of good health, relatively good health, or just the temporary situation of being alive, they will consider that at least tomorrow I will be alive. And tomorrow they will think at least tomorrow I will be alive. So Dhritarashtra may say that I may be old, but it's not that I'm death. I'm on the deathbed. So why should I leave immediately? So to this implicit question, Vidur answers in this verse that the fearful situation is the approach of time. So there is no way to fight it. So when you're faced with an enemy that is much more powerful than you, then the best approach is to do two things. One is to prepare, and the second is to retreat. So the enemy in this case is Kal. So he says that where's the word? Bhagavan Kalaha Sarvesham Samagata. How powerful is Kal? It is none other than Krishna. And Sarvesham. That not just for you, but for all of us, Samagata. So Samagata is in the present context. He is not saying that the time is arriving. He is saying that Krishna in the form of time here is death. Krishna in the form of death has arrived. So you need to take immediate action. So at this point, Dhritarashtra might say that, okay, I see an enemy coming towards me. The enemy is powerful, but surely there must be some remedy to it. So and Vidur says that this frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. So there is no point in trying to go to sages or saints or magicians and try to remedy the situation. And then Vidur says, it's not just for you. He says, Sarve Shamna, that it is there for all of us. So even people, Vidur is stating that even people who are much greater than you have failed before time. Lord Brahma also dies. Then great personalities like Hiranyakashipu and Ravan, they performed severe austerities to defeat time. But they were also ultimately vanquished by time. So compared to such great personalities like Brahma and Hiranyakashipu and Ravan, Dhritarashtra is insignificant. So he should not think that in any ways he will be able to escape the cruel grasp of time. So Vidur, he addresses Dhritarashtra as Prabhu. And in a way, it's conventional. It's conventional that Dhritarashtra is the elder brother of Vidur. So it's conventional to call him Prabhu, just like we address other devotees as Prabhu. In this context, Vidur is also saying that don't think that just because you're a Prabhu, you can escape the clutches of time. So by conventional standards, Dhritarashtra is a powerful person. He is the head of the Kuru dynasty. He is born of Srila Vyasadeva, and he has demonstrated different prowess in the past. So he is a powerful person, and he's obviously a special person because he has had personal association with Krishna. But the point that Vidur is making, that you may be a Prabhu, but despite all the power that you have, time will still defeat you. Why? Because Bhagavan Kalaha. Because that time is represented by Krishna. So three quotes that are given in this context that describes Krishna as time or death, all are from the Bhagavad Gita. So there's 10:34 where Krishna says, Mrityu sarva haraschaham, that I am all devouring death. Then in 11:32 Krishna says, Kalo asmi lokasya, where he says that time I am the great destroyer of worlds. And then in 8:16 Krishna says that from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery where there is repeated birth and death taking place. Okay, next verse 20. Yena cheva vipano yam prana priyatmayerapi jana sadya vijujeta kim mutaner danadibi. Whoever is under the influence of supreme Kal, eternal time, must surrender his most dear life. What to speak of other things such as wealth, honor, children, land, and home. So in his commentary to this verse, Sridhar Swami, he adds that Vidur is trying to make the point that there is no remedy in this world to counteract the effects of time. So regardless of how much wealth or how honorable the person is, or how many children the person has, or how rich the person is, death will still overpower him. The other way to, of course, understand this verse is that there are many things that are dear to a person. Dhana adabi. Of all this, the dearest to is one's own life, prana. And Sutta Goswami or Vidur is saying that eventually time will rob you of everything. When it robs you of your dearest possession, which is your pran, then what to say of other possessions, like your fame and wealth and opulence. So a very similar point is made by Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit in the second canto. Adehapatti kalatra desha atmasenasya satsvapi tesham pramatta nidhanam pasyanapina pashyati. That person devoid of atmatav do not inquire into the problem of life, being too attached to fallible soldiers like body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they do not see their own inevitable destruction. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he gives some anecdotal example of how people, even if they are important and great, they must surrender their lives whenever time comes. So death is on the terms of time. It's not on your terms. We don't fix that when I'm 92 years of age, on this Sunday in the evening I'll die. If you're a yogi at that stage, you can, but otherwise you can't. It's at a time. Carl has an appointment, and they say at this date, this year, this time, I have an appointment with this person. I will come and take his life. So Prabhupada gives an example that a great Indian scientist, busy in plan-making business, was suddenly called by invincible time while he was going to attend a very important meeting of the planning commission. And he had to surrender his life, wife, children, house, land, wealth, etc. So Prabhupada does not mention the scientist, but based on the time that he writes, so he wrote this in the late 60s. So the person that he's most probably speaking about is Dr. Homi Bhabha, who is the father of the nuclear program in India. And at that point, he was flying in France on a plane to attend a meeting, and the plane crashed, and he died. And just like that, I mean, he was young, he was intelligent, and extremely famous because he single-handedly ushered India into the nuclear age. He was a person who put in the foundation for later on the atomic bomb. So the reference is most probably to him. He died in a crash in 66 actually. Okay, next verse, 113:21. Pitra Bhratar Surtaputra Hataste Vigatam Vayam Atma Cha Jaraya Grasta Paragrayam Upashase. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you're living in the home of another. So you notice that now Vidur is speaking directly to Dhritarashtra. Previous verse, he was speaking generally. He was saying whoever is under the influence of supreme time must surrender his time. And before that, he said the frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person. So now from general, he has now gone into specifics. So he's established a philosophical basis. He's also established he's also painted a picture in a way to engage with Dhritarashtra. That I'm not attacking you in person. This is what is being done by the majority of the people, and you're with them. But there is no need for you to be with them. There is a better way that I can show to you. So here he's saying that you have witnessed death yourself. How have you witnessed death? That your father has died. Now the seminal father of Dhritarashtra is still living, Srila Vyasadeva, but his common law father, which was Vichitravir, has died. One of his brother, Pandu, has died. Vidur obviously is alive, but one of his brother has died. But then in the battle of Mahabharata, those who related to him like brother, they died. Then well-wishers have died. Well-wishers like Somadat, Bhurishwar, Drona, Ashwathama, Karna, they have all died. And then he said that your sons are all dead. So there can be nothing that is more disheartening for a father to witness the death of his own son. In case of Dhritarashtra, he witnessed the death of not one, not two, not three, but 100 of his sons. So they are all dead, and then he makes the point that your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and your major portion of your life has been expended. So Dhritarashtra is obviously old. So according to some calculations, Dhritarashtra at this point is about 150 years old. Now in Dwapar Yuga, people lived for 1,000 years. But then as Dwapar Yuga comes closer and closer to Kali Yuga, that lifespan reduced. And at the beginning of Kali Yuga, the lifespan was 100 years. And then later on in the 12th canto, we'll see where the predictions are made that a person who is 30 years of age will be considered to be very old in the later part of Kali Yuga. So at this point, it is reasonable for Vidur to say that you have expended the most of your life. Then finally, Vidur says that you're living in the house of another. So normally speaking, that statement would not be acceptable, because Dhritarashtra would say that I'm not living in the life of another. I'm not living in the house of another. That Yudhishthir is like my son. He's my brother's son, so he's like my son, and it is his duty to take care of me. So I'm living in my own house. Actually speaking, Yudhishthir did. When he invited Dhritarashtra to live, he did actually say that I'm being impudent by inviting you, because actually this is your own house. And of course, he was saying it because of his nobleness. But Dhritarashtra could also make this point. But Vidur is right in saying you're living in the house of another, because Dhritarashtra had made Yudhishthir another. Dhritarashtra never considered Yudhishthir to be his own. So by his actions, Dhritarashtra had made Yudhishthir separate from him. Because one does not try to kill one's own. And Yudhishthir was repeatedly manipulated by Dhritarashtra, trying to either drive him out of the house or kill him. So Vidur's statement that he's living in the house of another is actually true. So in a broader context, this verse, it also describes our situation, that we are living in the house of another. The material world is not our original house, but we have forced our way into the kingdom of Maya Devi, who really has not much affection for us. So we are forcing our way and living in the house of another. So parageham, and the proprietor of that house is intrinsically not friendly to us, Maya Devi. So that is why this house, even though we are living in it, is dukhalyam ashashvatam. That is why it is a place of misery. And just like when you have an unwanted guest in your house, you keep trying to kick the guest out of the house, and the guest keeps coming back. So that's what Maya Devi keeps trying to do, that she keeps trying to show us that how our residence in this world is temporary, but we still keep coming back. Then our real father is Krishna, Pitra, and in a way we have killed him. So Vidur says that your father is dead, Pitrahata. So that is our situation also, that our father is dead. Not because Krishna is dead, but because we consider him to be dead. Not only is Krishna dead for us, also Bhratar Surat, we have killed them also. So who is our well-wishers? Our well-wishers are the spiritually enlivened souls, the sages, the saints, the Vaishnav Acharyas. So they are our brothers and our well-wishers. And by refusing to follow their instructions, so they come and they give us instructions for our welfare, and then we refuse to follow it. And in that way, we have turned our back to them, and we have also killed them. Like Dhritarashtra, we are also blind, spiritually blind. Dhritarashtra was blind so that he could not distinguish between who was his friend and who was his enemy. And similarly, because we are spiritually blind, we cannot distinguish between what is good for us and what is not. Then Vidur says to Dhritarashtra, Vigatam Vayam, that you are dying. And what is the nature of this material world? That it is ashashvatam. That every moment, everybody is dying. Right from the time that a person is born, he begins to die. So the decay is the only constant in the material world. So Vigatam Vayam Jaraya Grastatha. And we because of our lack of awareness or a lack of desire, we have become invalid. Jaraya Grastata. So Grastata means grahast, that just like old age, it makes a person invalid. The person cannot move around. So similarly, our own conception, it has bound us. So that is why the instructions so this verse Vidur uses to describe the current situation of Dhritarashtra. And based on this current situation, he will give him instructions. So in subsequent verses also, he will give more verses to describe Dhritarashtra's current situation. But the fact that the description of Dhritarashtra's current situation is also a description of our situation means that the instructions that Vidur is going to give to Dhritarashtra are also equally relevant and cogent for us. So we should not think back and say that these are for Dhritarashtra, he was a rascal, not for us. They are actually applicable to us also. Okay, next verse, 113:22. Andapuraye vavadiro mandaprakyascha sampratam Vishirnadanto mandagni saraga kapaha udvahan. You have been blind from your very birth, and recently you have become hard of hearing. Your memory is shortened, and your intelligence is disturbed. Your teeth are loose, your liver is defective, and you're coughing up mucus. So previously Vidur had informed Dhritarashtra that you are old and invalid. And Dhritarashtra might say, how can you say that I am old and invalid? So Vidur says that, well, blindness, I don't think I can hold as a symptom of these two, but let me tell you other ways by which I consider you to be old and invalid. So this is a technique that we had seen earlier, where emphasis is through elaboration. And here it is used in a negative way. Earlier on, we saw when there was a description of Dwarka, then there was elaborate description given of Dwarka with minute details that were given. Similarly, when there was a description of the queens at Dwarka, then they were described in minutiae. And there we understood that this is the technique that is used by writers for the sake of emphasis, they will elaborate. So Vidur is doing that over here also, that he's elaborating for emphasis. So just saying you're old may have some effect, but then elaborating on how do I consider you to be old has a much stronger effect. The example that is given here is that a man may approach a woman and say you're beautiful, and that will have some effect on the woman. But the man may approach a woman and say you're beautiful because your eyes are so nice, and because your smile is so enchanting, and because your hair are like the waves of an ocean, and that will have an even stronger impact. So even though both of them are conveying the same message, but through elaboration, the emphasis becomes much stronger. So Vidur he's not doing this again to belittle his brother. He's not saying that you're losing your teeth. Haha, I have my teeth, you don't have teeth. So he's not doing it in that mood. He's really, his main goal is to develop renunciation in Dhritarashtra. And to help him develop renunciation, he's trying to show him what is it that you're attached to. Is it even worth being attached to? And that will help. So the general flow that you will see is Vidur does not inspire spiritual attachment in Dhritarashtra, because as devotees we do not give a lot of weightage to renunciation. We give more weightage to spiritual attachment, and then we say that the renunciation is an automatic byproduct. And the reason is because we are fortunate to have the shelter of Prabhupada. So the mood of devotees, the mood of bhakti, is that of developing attachment, which results in detachment. But Vidur knows that Dhritarashtra, he has very little attachment for Krishna. So he knows that if he tries to steer him towards Krishna, he will lose him there. So as an expert preacher, he is making do with the situation that he is in. And we see the same mood in Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada would preach according to the qualification of the person that he was preaching to. So if you see some of Prabhupada's conversations, when he was speaking to people who are very, very committed to their own, like priests or very strongly materialistic people, then what would he preach? He would not talk about Krishna to them. What would he preach to them? Become vegetarian. He would say that with one of the priests, he has this conversation that your own Jesus Christ, and Prabhupada would say, Lord Jesus, has said that thou shalt not kill. And then why do you kill? Don't kill poor animals. Right? At other points, Srila Prabhupada would say that vegetarianism is a means to an end. Don't be proud to be a vegetarian. But that was to people whom he was guiding towards spiritual attachment. But to these people, Prabhupada knew that the best thing that he can do is to get them out of a sinful situation, to at least make them sattvic, so that they stop committing sins, eating meat which contaminates the consciousness, and that way they have very little hope for making real spiritual attachment. So he would talk about things in the mode of goodness, specifically vegetarianism. And like I said, we see the same concept being followed by Vidur over here. So what are the specifics that Vidur is giving, which can be seen by Dhritarashtra himself? He says that Saragaha Kapaham Udavan, that you have a hacking cough with mucus coming out. Vishnu Danta, that your teeth is falling out. So these are gross. Not gross in the way that they are gross, but gross in the way that they are not subtle. So he talks about both, that how Dhritarashtra is declining, both in the gross body and the subtle body also. So then he talks about Manda Pragya, that your mind has become weak, and Manda Agni, that the fire of digestion has become become weak also. So symptoms that can be seen, symptoms that can be experienced. He's calling out both of them. So Prabhupada in the purport says the signs pointed out by Vidur in the body of Dhritarashtra are the signs of apakshaya, or dwindling of the material body before the last stroke of death. The body is born, it develops, stays, creates other body and dwindles and then vanishes. So this aspect of the time is known as Kalsrutra. And Kalsrutra is described as having Sadvikar, or the 6 kinds of changes that Srila Prabhupada lays out. That the Sadvikar is born, develops, stays, creates byproducts, dwindles, and then vanishes. So what Vidur is saying is that when you are seeing the first 5, that means the sixth is going to come. So there are some that he does not say because they're obvious, that Dhritarashtra was born, then he developed, he produced offspring, etc. But now he's talking about the 5th wave, the dwindling. So the dwindling is happening. So the point is that the 6th wave, the final wave, is just a matter of time before it happens. So one may question at this point that earlier on, when Vidur was asked by Dhritarashtra about the welfare of Krishna and the Dwarkavasis, he did not answer them. And the reason that he didn't answer it, Prabhupada says, is because he's a pious person and pious people do not like to hurt other people. But here we see that Vidur is being hurtful. So sitting in front of a person saying that you're old, your teeth is falling, and you're coughing up mucus, and you're about to die, it's not generally considered as decorum or congenial conversation. And this is one of the situations where the ends justify the means. That yes, Vidur is being harsh on Dhritarashtra for the benefit of Dhritarashtra. He did not reveal about Krishna to the Pandavas because he did not see any immediate benefit coming out of it. And Vidur knew that the nature of such thing is that they would eventually know about it. So he was not keeping them in the dark because they would eventually find out about it, but he was not revealing it to them because at least he personally did not want to hurt them. So there was no justifiable end for giving bad news. Here there is a justifiable end, which is the benefit of Dhritarashtra. So the position of a sadhu is to look at things from all perspectives, because a lot of these things that are said are not universally applicable. They have to be evaluated in the reference of the context, and that is what Vidur is doing over here. Okay, so I'll stop over here and see if there is any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Especially from the last 2 verses, when Vidur is giving his kind of instruction to Dhritarashtra. It's not even his perspective. So how do we see from our day-to-day life, how do we compare if we are not supporting or influencing the spiritual advancement? Do we have to take it as a vairagya? Like,
so if I understand your question correctly, what you're saying is that if we see somebody who is strongly materialistic, but we feel that our interaction with him is not going to help him spiritually, do we still give those kinds of
On, yeah.
is that
Is that that's right.
okay? So it's a good point, Prabhu, because preaching is something that is that is very, very context sensitive, um, um, very different in different circumstances. And this particular example also brings forth it. So if there is a situation that the engagement is not going to benefit the other person, then it is better not to to say or do things that are hurtful, because not only will they not benefit the person, they will actually harm the person. And they will harm the person because when you say something hurtful to people that you do not have a relationship with, then it will result them in being averse to you and everything that you stand for. So instead of trying to get them closer to Krishna, you will actually push them away from Krishna. So you will achieve exactly opposite from what you what you get. So better in this situation is to preach by example. That instead of telling the person that material life is one of this and that, better for the person to see that you are leading a life that the other person may be aspiring to lead. And once the person gets inspired, then the opportunity is there to exchange.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, the ninth offense. Don't preach to a faithless person. No?
Correct. Same. So that offense is put in there for the same reason. That preaching to a faithless person will cause the person to become offensive to Krishna and to you. So it does not achieve any purpose. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Dandavat Pranams. This is Achita Priya Devidasi. I was wondering if we had any information about Vidura's wife while Vidura traveled through the pilgrimage. Anything on that area?
So it's a good question. I personally don't. The only understanding that I have that is that he seems to have left alone, but his wife is not mentioned either way. So it does not say that he left who he left with. So answer is don't know.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions? We have a few minutes.
Class is kind of hitting for us also, bro. Like,
That's true. That's true.
Prabhuji, when we hear such instructions, then some feelings, when they touch us, like it is pretty much hitting us, like if we put ourselves in Dhritarashtra position. So that also means that all those bad qualities are there in us. That is why we are feeling bad. Need not be.
Some extent, yes. That Srila Prabhupada says we are all Dhritarashtras. Maybe small ones, but we have the reflection of that qualities. Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra. Dhrit means firmly and Rashtra means kingdom. And we have also that quality that we want to hold strongly onto whatever little kingdom we have. We may have a small house or a small car or a small bank balance or a small family. So we want to hold on strongly to it. And like in the Acharya's in the verse that was talked, that they spoke about, that so many things that Vidur was attributing to Dhritarashtra. That you're blind and you're weak and your mind is not in order, we can see that they can be also applied to us. Um, um, if not, I mean, at least as a metaphor can be applied to us. He was physically blind, we are spiritually blind, and he was weak because of old age. We are weak because we lack conviction. So yes, these the reason these things are there in the Bhagavatam. Essentially, Bhagavatam is a book is a preaching book. That the reason Srila Vyasadeva put it there was that it brings about a change in our heart. So yes, it's meant to touch our heart.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. I have one more question. I'm sorry. Right now, because we are in Kali Yuga, and also we are in the family life. So wondering, like, based on the situations right now, I don't know. I mean, it's different for male and female, I guess, but we get attached to the family, and then we get attached to the grandkids and all that. So when is the detachment should happen in this life right now based on our situation? When should that we have to consider that we have to be away from that knot of attachment and be purely into Krishna consciousness completely?
So thank you for the question. So the answer to the when is yesterday. That it should always be there. It should be something that if you start doing it today, you're one day too late. So the notion of that at a particular ashram we start cultivating detachment is more for the karma kand, a part of it, not really for devotees. Now, the second aspect to it is, and the answer to that question would be opposite to the first answer, that it should never happen. That as devotees, we should never become detached from our family members. We should never become detached from our wealth. We should never become detached from our fame. So we should become detached from it yesterday, from the sense that all of this is meant for our enjoyment. We should never become detached from it because we can use all of it in Krishna's service. And Prabhupada talks about this in maybe a few verses down when he makes the comparison, because Vidu's preaching to Dhritarashtra is very strongly in the mode of Vairagya. And then Prabhupada at some point gets worried that people reading this will start feeling bad. That how can we cultivate this level of Vairagya? So Prabhupada, in the mood of an Acharya, he comes through and he says, you don't have to. In fact, what he says is that better than an Acharya is a Narottam. And he says, who is a Narottam? Narottam, so he says, so he says that a sannyasi is one, I forget the phrase that he used, but the point that he makes is that I don't want to, I forget the phrase, Prabhupada presents it beautifully, but the point that he makes is that better than renunciation is to change the center to Krishna. So the point that you're making is that your family, husband, children, or for a husband, wives, and children, etc. There is no injunction for us to become detached from them. The only injunction that we have is not to be materially attached to them.
Thank you, Prabhu. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a nice question. Okay, so if there's anything else, any other thoughts? Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll meet next week on Monday. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhyaeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, शीला प्रभुपाद की जय, यथाय गौर प्रेमानंद, हरि हरि बोल।